Hi guys, good evening everyone. This is Ashank David and welcome back to our Coders Arcade channel for this live stream. Today we are going to start with C++ object oriented as per the requests, because in the evening every day we do DSA. So in DSA there were some students which were facing problems related to object oriented programming in C++. So today here I am. This is going to be the first session of C++ object oriented programming, and this program I am planning to do it for 1 week straight. For this whole week, every day I will be coming live 2 times, one for C++ object oriented and then the next for DSA as usual at 6 o'clock. So if you have any doubts related to C++ object oriented, or you have any problem with C++ basics parts, right, I am here to solve all your doubts. So you can ask me doubts here. You've got the chance to ask your doubts here right now at this time at 4 o'clock, and every day for this week till Friday, Saturday, I'll be planning according to the topics that we are going to cover. We are going to decide till what all things we are going to do in this particular live streams. Well, today is going to be the first day of this live stream, and in this session today I am going to tell you the importance of object oriented programming of C++. Object oriented programming is a really important concept in DSA, and whatever we are doing in DSA, in the evening 6 o'clock DSA live stream, we are creating the classes and objects in C++. So to know about this much more in depth, join me right here in this live session. Now before I start with this live stream, I would like to request you people to share this live stream to all your friends and more friends, so that they can also get the opportunity to learn C++ object oriented with me. This is Ashank David. Let's start this live stream and let's go. So in this case, we are going to talk about C++. Okay, C++ object oriented. Every single day I am coming, from past few days I am coming in evening DSA, for DSA basically DSA for placement series we are doing, and there we are right now doing stacks, queues and linked lists. We have already finished up, but in the concepts, in all those concepts, all of those concepts I have done, I have used object oriented programming in C++. Well, a lot of people are confused into that, of how I am creating classes, what are objects, what are constructors, what are attributes, how does the methods they work. So don't worry about that, guys. I will be covering all of that in today's live session. So let us start. So guys, why C++ object oriented is so important for us to learn about? What exactly is object oriented? Let us talk about all of that in depth in today's live. Let's start. So here I am having in my background, as you can see, I have my VS Code opened up, and I have just created a new project file here called as C++ oops tutorial, object oriented programming tutorial. So in this case I will be showing you all the things related to this. Okay, so now let us start. Here first of all I will be opening up my Microsoft whiteboard, so that where I can explain you all the things. So let me just quickly do that. Here I will create a new whiteboard, and I believe so that the brightness will be too much high for this, so I will change the color to black, much more pleasing, right? Yep, all right. So let us continue. I hope so now this feels much more better actually now. Okay, so we are doing C++ object oriented. What exactly is object oriented? What do you mean by object oriented? Let us talk about that now. So we are doing object oriented programming. Where in C++. Okay, object oriented programming in C++. So what is it all about? First of all, you need to be familiar with C++. Okay, I hope so that you are familiar with C++. If not, then the basics of C++ at least you need to do. We have already created another separate playlist on C++. So if you watch that videos, you will learn about C++ as well. Well, the main motto of me starting this live sessions throughout this week is because of object oriented, as you can see in the heading, object oriented. Okay, and the problems which we were facing in doing DSA in object oriented, so we will solve all those things. So I'm gonna from the scratch teach you about object oriented, but remember guys, for that you need basics of C++ as a prerequisite. Just the normal basics you should know. To know about the normal basics, you should know about basics of C. So C and C++, these two languages, basics at least you should know, so that it will help you later on to understand these concepts which I am doing right now. These concepts will be directly be applicable into the DSA classes that we are doing in the evening. Okay, let us start. So in this case, object oriented programming in C++. So first of all, understand what exactly is object oriented programming. You see, there are two different types of categories of programming. One is your procedural programming and the second one is object oriented programming. Now in procedural programming, what do you see is that the lines are repeated. I mean to say, first of all, as you already know, there is this procedural. What exactly is procedural? Procedural means only step by step. Step by step. Here, step by step means we are doing everything in a proper fashion, in a proper order. Okay, so the first step has to come at the top, then only the second step will come, then only the third step will come, and so on. It will keep on going, it will keep on going, it will keep on going like this. But in this type of approach, what happens is that in a step by step approach, it is good, but the thing is, this is the original way of programming, by the way. This is the original way of programming, is this only procedural. Your first ever high level language, C programming, is also a procedural programming. It doesn't support object oriented, right? But in this case, what happens is that it becomes repetitive. It becomes repetitive. Things starts becoming repeated. So in this case, what happens is the redundancy. When the redundancy increases, automatically the length of the code increases, and when the length of the code increases, what happens? Your code becomes inefficient, your code becomes slow. It takes a lot of time for the compiler to run the code. It takes a lot of time for the compiler to execute the code. So that is the reason why procedural becomes sometimes slow and repetitive in this case. So to overcome this problem, we came up with object oriented programming. In C++, object oriented was introduced, and it because you already know that C++ is an extension of C only. Whatever we had in C is all supported into C++, but with few tweaks and some additional content. For example, the syntax has been changed in C++. Even though it is the extension of C, everything from C runs into C++. The concepts like structures and unions, everything is working here in C++, but rather than directly using them, we are forced to use new things. Now it's up to you, it's all your preference, what you need to use, what you don't have to use, it's up to you. But object oriented programming was a new thing which was introduced into C++. Because of that, it went so useful. It became so much useful that in today's DSA class we are still using it. Trust me guys, doing DSA in C++ makes your life easier, much more easier than Java. That is what That happens when you know the concept of pointers very well. In interviews, the concept of pointers is also asked, and if you don't know about pointers, then it becomes very difficult for you. Doing DSA in C++ becomes very difficult if you don't understand about pointers, but when you first finally come to understand pointers, it becomes very easy. Now, I am not discouraging anybody, or I am not just saying that that C++ is bad or C++ is good or Java is bad or Java is good. No, I am saying that try to learn pointers concept, it will make you an all-rounder. Understanding and doing pointers concept is also very important. Well, I am going to teach you that also as a bonus concept in these live streams. So, let us start with that. I will come to that later on though. Let us continue from object oriented. Now, object oriented programming came in C++ and it was an additional content to what C was providing in C++. So, what exactly is object oriented? So, as I have explained you that this is procedural. Procedural means step by step programming. Well, when we do that, it becomes repetitive, the code becomes redundant and the length of the code increases unnecessarily, and when that happens, so what happens is that it becomes slow and it takes a lot of time for the compilation and execution to happen, and that is the reason why we have another option of object oriented programming that we are now dealing with. Take an example. I am going to explain you with the help of the example. For example, I asked you that we are writing a program. I have, imagine, just suppose I have given you a example. You are writing a program and I said that I want to create one car. To create one car, you started writing, let's say 12 lines of code. You started writing 12 lines of code for one car. Just imagine. Now I said I don't want one car, I want 1000 cars. Now I want 1000 cars. So will you write how many lines you will code? If one car is taking 12 lines, so 1000 cars will take 12 into 1000 lines, right? Am I correct? Yes. Which is equals to 12,000 lines of code. Practically, you tell me about, is this possible to write 12,000 lines of code so fast and so efficient? Repetition is there, redundancy is there. Unnecessary, the code which doesn't have to repeat is now getting repeated. So unnecessarily it becoming so much long that it becomes very slow. Well, this is procedural programming. Understood my point? But now if I want to do this with the object oriented style, then I would have gone by creating a class. Okay. The same example, I would start by creating a class called as car, and inside that class car I would have written those 12 lines of code, and once I would have written those 12 lines of code in one place, I could have just instantiated an object out of it, and as soon as I create the object, what happens is that all the 12 lines are reused. This is what object oriented programming brings us. Let us understand about object oriented programming in more depth now. I hope so you have got my example program. If you have any doubts, please ask me guys. I will be clearing your doubts. This is a good opportunity to clear all your doubts related to C++ object oriented. Let us continue. So what exactly is object oriented? What is object oriented programming? What is OOPS? It stands for object oriented programming. Everything depends upon the objects here. Objects is the main key role, playing key role inside this type of programming. So everyone knows about what is an object. Speaking of object, what exactly is an object? Before I start with this, let me just explain you one thing, that object oriented is actually deals with real world things. Object oriented programming deals with real world things. What happens here in this case? Why I'm saying that it deals with real life is, you see, the main thing is that object oriented programming did not come first. Actually, our life is only object oriented. What I mean to say is we are living in an object oriented world where every single thing around you, whatever you see right now, placed in, surrounded by you, is all an object only in this case. Okay. If I tell you what exactly is an object, object is any real world entity. Any real world entity which exists in this world is an object. Now, every object is actually being coming from its own categories. Okay, every object will have its own category. What do you mean by category? Category means, you can say here I can say the term I can use is class. Okay, what exactly is a class? Here category only means class. Every object has its class. Here you see there are many different kinds of objects in this case. Anything in this world can be divided into objects and classes. You see, if someone asks you what is a class, they will say class is the blueprint for creating the objects. In this case, blueprints for creating the objects. So what exactly is that? You see, classes are what? Blueprints. So what happens is that everything in this world is an object, and every object has a class, okay, or a category from where it is being created or being used to get created in this case. What I mean to say is that object is any real world entity. In this case, let us try to understand with the help of a real world example. Okay, in this case, let us say you have a pen. You have a pen. Now, this pen is from company, it is from company Logic. It is from the company Logic. Now, like this, there are many different pens. The stylus I am talking about, the touch screen pen, the touch screen stylus. Now, there are many different styluses of many different companies. Samsung also makes one, even Apple makes one, even many different companies are there. Okay. So, all of those styluses are what? Different objects of the class called as pen. Let me tell you a good and easy example. Take an example of, let's say, car. Okay. To manufacture a car, we create its blueprint first, or maybe take an example of a building. Everyone knows what is blueprint, right? Let us say you are constructing a building. To construct a building, first what do? You create the blueprint. When you create a blueprint, what happens is that you get an idea of what you are going to do next. And what happens when you start building? You reuse the blueprint until the building is completed. Now, once the building is made, you can use the same blueprint to make another building. Use the same blueprint to print another building. And you can keep on doing this till you have that blueprint. So, blueprint is what allows us to reuse the content, allows us to reuse the things in this case. Take an example of car. When a car is manufactured, the first thing that what we do is create a blueprint of that car. Once the blueprint is ready, we put that blueprint into the factory, and the factory starts producing different cars. I hope so that you are getting my point. So, now cars are of different types. You have basically, if you talk about company wise, brand wise, you have Mercedes, you have BMW, you have Rolls Royce, even you have Maruti 800, you have Toyota, you have Tata. All of these are the different objects. All of these are different objects, but their class or their category is one, that is car, C-A-R, car. So, what happens is that this is what? It's a blueprint. Car is a blueprint, while Mercedes, BMW, Audi, all these are the objects of this class called car. So, car becomes the category, while Mercedes and BMW becomes the object of that category called as car. Take an example of a student. Student, the name student is the blueprint, but you are a student, likewise your friend is also a student. There are hundreds and hundreds of students. It does not matter you are an engineering student or a mechanical student or a medical student, medicine student, whatever. Student is a student. A student will have a roll number and student will have a name. So student is a student. But it doesn't matter what kind of student you are, in which college you are studying about, but you are a student. So you became the object of this class called a student, and student is your blueprint. I hope so that you are able to understand my point. Take another example, employee. Now I am an employee. So I became the object of this class called employee. My class became employee. My blueprint is employee. Okay. Well, I am a trainer. So my employment says that I am a trainer. Well, I am an employee, but there are hundreds and millions of employees around the world. There can be millions and millions of trainers doing different kinds of training or teaching something, right? So what happens is that there the class is only one, employee, but there are different kinds of employees. So we are the objects of employee class. I hope so that you are getting my point, what I am trying to explain you. Understood? Take any example. You take any example, anything in this world can be divided into classes and objects. Well, class is a blueprint, while object is any thing which exists in this world. Take any example you want, you can take any example. You say bird. Bird is a class, blueprint. There is a sparrow, crow, hen, these are all types of birds. Ostrich is a bird. These are all objects of birds. Animal, you have cat, rat, dog, all of these things are objects of the class animal. Anything in this world can be divided into classes and objects. I hope so that you have understood this really well. If you have any doubts, please let me know in the comment section below, as well as in the live chat, so that I can see and I can explain your doubt. Anyways, let's continue. I hope so that the concept of classes and objects is very much clear to all of you, right? So we have learned that class is the blueprint and object is an entity or the instance of that class. Understood? Next up. So in this case, object oriented programming, if someone asks you what exactly is an object, or what exactly does object oriented programming does, in this case, so what you will say, object oriented programming brings you, there are two aims of it. Okay. Number one, reusability. Number two, first of all is reusability, number two is security. Okay, these are the two major things that is why object oriented programming is used for. You see, when you can reuse your code, you don't have to repeat it. That means your code will become smaller. If your code is secured, then nobody will be able to change it or accidentally modify it, or nobody will be able to steal it. Well, security is also a main reason of concern right here. So for that reason, we have this object oriented programming. I hope so that you are getting my point, what I am trying to say. Have any doubts, please let me know in the chat. Okay, speaking of object oriented programming, if you want, you can so if you want to write a object oriented program, just follow these 4 steps. Okay, number 1, 4 steps. Four steps to create object oriented program. Number 1, create a class. Start with a class. I am talking about in any supported object oriented program. It may be Java or it may be Python also. You have to do this first. So first of all you create a class. Once your class is created, the second thing that you do is create, you say object? No. First you create the attributes. Okay, the attributes is very important. Now disclaimer, this is totally optional. If you have attributes, well and good, please do include them. If you don't have attributes, fine, leave them. Okay. Third, objects, nope, it's methods. Without methods, what you will do in the program? You don't have anything to do in the program without methods. Number 4, at last you have finally objects. First create a class, then write the attribute, then write the methods, and then at last you write the objects. I hope so that this is very much clear. Let me talk about all of these one by one. In this case, you see classes you already know. What is it? It is a blueprint for creating the objects. You already got to know. What are objects? Objects are any real world entity and are the instances of their class. Objects and classes can be divided in this world, anything can be divided into objects and classes, and you see that classes acts as a blueprint while the object is created using that. Understood this? Next up is attribute and method. You talk about attribute, you talk about the property of the class. I can say properties. So here you have properties of the class. What exactly, what I'm talking about? Properties of a class means, you see in here, every single class, it is not important that every single class will have an attribute. It is possible that an attribute will not be also there. So in that case, you just leave that. For example, what I am trying to say is, you see, for example, if we talk about a student as a class student, if I say class student, for the student class I have two attributes. Number 1, name. Number 2, roll number. Yes or no? These are the two attributes of the class. If we talk about let us say employee, then we have employee name, we have employee salary, we have employee ID, and so on. There are many. Talk about anything else. We talk about car. If the car is the class here, then car will have, let's say, first brand name. Okay. Second thing is manufacturing date. Third one is can be a color in this case. I hope so that this is very much clear what I am trying to say. In all of these cases, you see one thing is common, that every single of the classes that you are seeing here has some properties. This is the attribute. This here, right here, is the attribute. For this car, this is the attribute. So in this case, these are the attributes. If you have them, like in these places we have these attributes, you will write them and you will create the constructor in this case. I hope so that this is very much clear. I hope so, right? If you have any doubts, please ask me, okay? In this case, these are the attributes. Now let's take an example of the classes which will not have any attributes. So for example, class hello, if I say a hello class will not have an attribute. There is nothing to say. I can say no attribute. I don't know what is the attribute. You can forcefully create one, or let's say you don't have it, so you leave it. In this case, we don't have the attribute. Let's say somebody created demo class. Now demo also doesn't have any attribute, no attribute. Attributes are basically properties of the class. And here, guys, This is the place where it becomes a little bit confusing. Now remember this, that if you have attributes, you will say yes to the constructor. This is the place where you will talk about constructor. What is a constructor? It is a function which allows us to initialize the attributes or the properties of the class. Remember this, guys. Let me explain you this very calmly, very slowly. If the attributes, see, I told you that attributes are optional. If the attributes are there, then you write the attributes. But when you don't have the attributes, you don't write the attributes. Writing the attributes, I mean to say, is creating a constructor. So when you have attribute, you create a constructor. When you don't have an attribute, you do not create a constructor. Now what exactly is constructor? Don't worry about it. I'll explain you each and everything in depth. But before we go ahead into this, I want to tell you something about constructors. Now you see, what is a constructor? Constructor is a function which has the same name as the class name. Now I am going to go into depth of this, not right now, but I am just telling you in brief. Okay, there are some functions which will have the same name as the class name, and when this happens, it becomes a constructor. It is called as a constructor. If constructor do exist, then also do destructors exist. Destructors do exist in this case. So constructor also exists and destructor also exists. In C++, yes, we are supported with the destructors. So if you don't know about it, yes, in interviews this question can be asked, that what is a constructor and what is a destructor. I will be teaching you both of them, don't worry. Just as of for now, try to understand the attribute part. Okay, understood. Okay, so in this case we have done two things. We have created the class, we have defined the attributes. So this part is also done. Okay, this part is also done. Last one is method. Now what exactly is a method? Method is what? If someone asks you what is a method, you know functions? Yes. Methods are functions only. It is the same. Functions only which are written inside the class. Understood our point? You see, methods are the functions written inside the class. It's like having two names. When you are here in the class, you are called with your official name, your professional name. But when you are at home, your mom, dad calls you whatever your home name is. Pinky, Chinky, Pinto, Tinu, whatever it is, right? Similar to that, a function, when it is written outside the class, it is called as function. But when a function, when it is written inside the class, now it will be called as method. Understood my point, everyone? Very easy, very clear. Okay. So to sum this up, we have understood what is a class. Class is a blueprint. Attribute is the property that is common to a particular class, and if you have the attributes, you will create a constructor. If you don't have the attributes, you don't create a constructor. I have not told you about destructor yet, but I will explain you about destructors also very soon, so stay tuned for that. Next, I have told you about already the object. What is object? Object is an entity that exists in this world and is created by instantiating the class, because class is a blueprint for creating the objects only. We have understood that now. Next up, speaking about methods, methods are the functions which are written inside the class. That's it. I hope so that this is very, very much clear. You have any doubts, please let me know in the comment section. We are moving towards the next part. In this case, so you have understood this really well. Well, now let us move on towards the programming part of this live session and try to understand some concepts from it. Okay. Now I will be going on to my VS Code, and here is my VS Code, as you can see. I hope so that my this thing screen is visible. I hope so my screen is visible. Okay guys, let us continue. Yes, so in here for you today, I have specially created another project here in VS Code, which tells where we will be writing about all the programs that we are going to do today in the live session and in the future lives. Also, I'll design this course very well, and I'll give you the link of all the files which I am storing here in the description below, so that you can also download it and you can also use it and learn it for your own purpose. Remember, I am doing this for you, so you have to stay here and just watch and understand what I am going to tell. Now, let us start. So, this is my project right here. I have created the project C++ object oriented programming tutorials. So, in this case, as you know, this is VS Code. So, if someone doesn't know about what is VS Code is an IDE where we are trying to write the code for C, C++. You can write many different programming languages for C, C++, Python, Java also. You can do a lot of things can be done in this case. So, here you can see that I have my interface ready, and in this case what I am trying to do is that I will be creating a new file. So, I will click onto this new file, I will click right here into this new file, and here I am going to give the name of this file. So, actually let me zoom in here a little bit so that it is very much clear to all of you. Okay. Alright. So, right here in my this channel I am going to create a new file here. Let us start from the basics. I am going to create a new folder first. I am going to say here basics. Okay, and inside this new folder basics I am going to create a new file here called as, let us say demo.cpp. So, it is a C++ file. I will press enter, and there you go. Now, it is directed, it is C++ program, and you can see that we are into the code part. Now, I will minimize this up and I will start writing the code. So, let us understand this properly. Okay. So, now in this case I will start by writing the hash include IO stream. Everyone knows about this much basics, right, that we write hash include IO stream. The next line which I am going to write is using namespace std. Okay. These two lines everyone knows. I am going to create int main, and here in this case I will say return 0. Okay. So, in this case like this. Now, because I have created a new project, guys, you see that this error might come into your project file as well. So, this is a hash include error, as you can see. You cannot open the source file IO stream. Please run the select IntelliSense configuration like this to locate your system headers. Now, this is a very common problem, and if you are facing this as well, like how I am doing, then to solve this issue I have already created one video separately, hash include errors. Please go ahead and watch that as well. But those people who are curious about directly knowing it here, I am going to give you a small brief answer for this. Is just what you need to do is you just have to hover your mouse like this over. I am going to hover my mouse over like this, and you see there are two options which are coming right here. Let me just show you what I am trying to say. There are two options coming up right here. The one option is view problem, and the other option is quick fix. This quick fix is what you need to actually do and perform in this case. Okay. So, in this case what I will do is I will click onto that quick fix, and here you can see that there are two options coming up: edit compiler path setting and disable error squiggles. So, I will click on to edit compiler path. For those people who do not know what exactly is an error squiggle, this red line which you are seeing here is what you call as a squiggle, and red error squiggle means it is an error. When you have a yellow squiggle means warning. These curly lines are what you call as squiggles in technical terms. When you have a green squiggle means everything is fine, it's just a small, maybe some small mistake. Okay. But in this case there are two options available. You have edit compiler path setting and disable error squiggle. You need to click on to edit compiler path setting, and when you do that, you see that it opens up into this, in this case. Or it opens up this C++ configuration files. In this case, you see. I hope so that this is much more visible now. Okay. So, I have C++ configuration files opened up, and here you have IntelliSense configurations. You have to scroll down a little bit, and you see that you will find this compiler path option. Once you find this compiler path option, you can see that here everything is empty in this case. In the compiler path, everything is empty. What you need to do is you need to copy and paste the compiler path wherever you have installed it, probably wherever you have installed MinGW in this case. For more details, I have already created this video and I have kept into our error solving part. So please do go ahead and watch that video also. Okay, for me it is already there in the drop down menu because I have solved this issue a lot of times, so I am directly using that. But as soon as I do this, this terminal window will come up and then I can close this and then this error is gone. So like this you are solving this. For more details on this, please go ahead and click and watch that video. Okay, but let's continue from here. So this is our basic C++ skeleton. This is how it is looking like. Now I'm gonna continue from where I left. In the object oriented programming, there are two things that you need to do, right? The very first thing is there are four things actually that you need to do, and the very first one is creating a class, second one is to create the attributes, the third one is to create a function and or methods in this case, and the third one is going to be the creating the object in this case. Now listen to this very carefully, guys. There are two ways we can write a program. The first way when you have an attribute, and the second way when you don't have the attribute. I'll tell you about when you don't have the attribute first, because when you write an attribute you have to create a constructor. So in that class I will explain you about what is a constructor, but right now here I will take an example of a class without any attributes, so that it becomes very simple for today's session. And in 15 minutes anyways I am going to end, so I will just tell you about this right here quickly. Okay, so in this case we need to do a program. First of all, we will create a class in this case. See, I will just write class keyword, I will say class, and what class should I create? Should I create a student class? Should I create a employee class or student class? If someone is there, please let me know. I will create that class or whatever you want in this case. I hope so. Nobody is typing, so I will take a good example. I will take an example of maybe a student. I will take an example, not student. Student is very common. I will take an example. I will take this example of student right now. It will be easy. I will say class student. I will say, and you will open up the curly braces like this. And don't forget that the class name always starts with a capital letter in this case. Okay, and also one more thing don't forget is that the class ends in C++ with a semicolon here. So you need to put up the semicolon right here. So class is student and then you have to end it with a semicolon. So this is the container of the class where we are going to write all the code in this case. So this is the category, this is the blueprint. Later on the objects will be created in the main function. So let us see that right now. In this case I have created a class called as a student, and in this class student I am going to write all my things, all my stuff in this case. Okay, or let us do a program without attributes first in this case. X, Y, Z, student. Yeah, the thing is that in this case I told you there are two ways, right? There are two ways. Without creating the attributes, when a class doesn't have an attribute, and when a class has an attribute. Well, we know that student will have an attribute, that is name and roll number. So let us not take this example. Okay, let us not take this example. I am going to take another different example. Let us take an example which doesn't have any attributes. What can it be? Hello. A good example is class hello. So I said class hello. Now I have said that this class I don't know what is the attribute of this class. So I said okay, I will not write the attribute. So what you will write next? The attribute part is skipped only. In this case, if I show you this, first thing is creating a class. This thing is done. Okay, this thing is done. This thing is done. Okay, the next thing what you need to do is creating the attribute. Now attributes are not there, so we will skip this. This was optional, so we skip it. Next comes methods. So what all methods I can create in this program? See, let us say this program is gonna print hello world. To print hello world, remember this, that in any object oriented programming language, if you want to print something, you will just say directly cout or printf or just print, right? In any programming language, correct? In C++, how do we print? I will say cout. But number one point is that you cannot write a executable statement directly inside the class like this. I cannot say cout and then I cannot say hello like this. It is not acceptable. Remember this, that you cannot write a direct executable line of code inside the class. What you need to do is you need to create a method. You need to create what? You need to create a method, and the very first method that I am going to create is this is not Python, sorry, I'll not write def. What is the type of, how does we create a method in C++? We say the return type. So return type is, let's say, void in this case. Void, I said print hello in this case. Okay, print hello, void print hello. And when I say this, what happens is that this is a function which is being created. Now because this is a function written inside a class, now I will be calling it as method. Understood my point in this case? So I have this print hello. My two steps are done. First step was creating the class, second step it is gone because there is no attribute in the class. The third step is also done, creating the method or a function. What this function will do, now I will write this out hello inside this, and I will say end L, that will make it go to the next line. So in this case my print hello function is already completed now, written inside this hello class, and this is 3 steps are done. Last one is to create the object. One thing I am missing here is the access specifier. What is an access specifier? Let me explain you this. To write an access specifier, you have to write it like a label. So like this, public, and then you have to give the full colon. Now guys, let me explain this very clearly. What exactly is an access specifier? Well, I told you that object oriented programming promotes security, right? When it does that, what happens is that it has whenever whatever is being used inside the class has its own level of security to access. For example, by just remember this, that whatever you are going to write inside the class is going to be encapsulated, or it is going to be secure. Now everything inside the class has different access level, which is represented by the access specifier. In this case, there are 4 access specifiers in C++ object oriented programming. Number 1 is gonna be public, which I have written it right here. When you make anything public, the straightforward answer becomes that this function is now not being able to access by any other one other than the class's object itself. You see, if I create a hello class object, because you see, if I create a hello class object later on here, what happens is that that object will be able to access this print hello. Nobody else will be able to access this print hello. Public means available to everyone other than specifically a object specifically. In this case, public means only available to the objects of the class, not every single one out of the class. Okay, only available to the object of the class. In this case, let us say I am going to create an object, and where do we create the object? We create the object in the main. In this case, how do we create the objects in C++? We create the object by writing the class name hello, and then writing the object name obj in this case, and you just put a semicolon. You have created the object in this case of that hello class. And if I say here obj dot operator, you can see that this print hello is being callable. In this case, I can call the print hello function and it works in this case. So I'll just put a semicolon here to end this thing in this case, and you can see that my program is almost completed. You see here in this case, what I've done is I've started with creating a class, and inside this class, in the public section of this class, I have written this function print hello, and here in the main I have created the object. Of course, object can be created anywhere, but I want, because this is a very simple program and I want to make it much more simpler, I am writing the object inside the main. Most of the times you will also create the objects inside the main. Okay. Apart from that, here the object is what it is. It is the object of this class. It is the instance of the class which we have created, which means that it can reuse the class, and whatever is written inside that class like print hello can be accessible by it. You see, object oriented programming by default promotes security. When it does this, what happens is that nothing else can access this print hello apart from only the objects of that class. Public doesn't mean that everyone can access the class. No, not everyone. Every single objects of the class can access only the objects we are talking about in this case, not every single one out of public. Understood my point? I hope so that this is very much clear. We have 4 access specifiers, guys. That is public, then the next one is private, the next one is protected, and the next one is your default. When you write public, it becomes public. Public means available to all the objects of that class, but not on any other thing other than objects in this case. When you write here private, if I say here private, now this function print hello is not even accessible by the object itself. No objects can access a private method in this case, because object is being created in the different scope in this case. So what happens is that this object will not be able to access anything from this private section of the class. This is to ensure the security, and we try to create private only those variables and functions which you have to hide from the main function. So here more details on this when we will do abstraction and encapsulation about what exactly is private and how it works. Okay. Next one is protected. So I have to say here protected. When I say protected, in protected what happens is that only the child classes, only the children of that particular class can access that particular method. More on this later on when we will do inheritance. I will explain you how protected work there. Okay. 3 things we have done: public, private, protected, and the last one is gonna be your default. So when you don't write anything, when I don't write anything in the access specifier point, it becomes by default access specifier. Default access specifier means it is by default private. I hope so that this is very much clear. I hope so. Understood? So in this case, by default private means of course no object will be able to access it. Now the question is that if private and default doesn't allow anybody to access anything, then who will access? How to access a private method or a function, I will tell you in the encapsulation. So stay tuned till the last lecture of this class. That will happen at the end of this week. I hope so. Understood my point, guys? Everyone, let us continue. So I will make it back to public and then full colon. So whatever I have written inside this public, under public, will all become public. If you want to create a separate section inside for a different attribute, you can have it like a different label, and I can write more and more functions right inside this, like this. And this section of the class will be all private, and this section of the class will be all public in this case. This also can be done easily. I hope so that this is very much clear, crystal clear. Okay. So I said class hello, and I have in the public section of this class I have created the function print hello, and in this function is printing hello. Okay. In the main section I have created the object. I hope so that this you have understood how we are creating the object of the class, and then this object dot the function name. This is how you will call the function and create the object in this case for that particular class, and this is your C++ code, guys. I hope so that this is very much clear. I will try to run this code and check if it is running or not. So when you run for the first time, it takes some time, but yeah, there you go, it runs absolutely fine. It's printing hello. You see, because this function is actually doing the job, right? So if I call this function many times, it will do the job of printing that hello many times. So if I run this code, now you can see that it prints that hello many different times. Understood my point? I hope so. This is also very much clear. Okay. Apart from this, this is going to be enough for today's class for this 1 hour. In tomorrow's section, I will be explaining you about how to use a static keyword, and how to use a static keyword with the functions, how to write a program with the attributes. In this program, I have created a program without creating the attribute to the class. So we did not have any attribute to the class right here, but we have so in this case we have directly written the function in this case, and we have ignored the attribute. In tomorrow's class, I will be explaining you how to create a class with the attribute and how to write the constructor, because in that case I need to create a constructor also. As I told you that if you have the attribute, you create the constructor. If you don't have attribute, you just skip the constructor. You don't have to write the constructor in this case. So tomorrow's class is a very important class. Stay tuned for that, and I will be explaining you about constructors tomorrow. And well, that's it. I hope so that you have understood my class very well. If you have any doubts, please let me know in the chats. and 1 minute, the camera is off. 1 minute, let me just, yeah, so sorry for the interruption, my camera got shut down by mistake. My camera got shut down, it's okay. Okay, now yeah, so I'm back. Okay, so guys, wait guys, wait. All right guys, now wait, let's continue. I'm gonna end up this class, and I hope so that it is very much clear. All right, sorry for the technical difficulties, don't worry about it. In tomorrow's class I'll be doing that. I hope so that today's class you have understood this really well. If you have any doubt, please let me know in the comment section, and I'll see you again tomorrow guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again at 6 p.m. For those people who want to join for DSA, please join this DSA upcoming live. Thank you for watching. This is Ashank David signing off. I'll see you next time.